I'll take the rest. I'm just kidding. Wait. Can you do a thick one? Like more. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Enjoy, sir. Have a good night.
I don't want that one. Nah, I don't want that one.
No, you want the middle?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Welcome back, everybody. I crack myself up when I'm getting food. That was funny. Anyway, guess where I'm headed? I'm going to the Palms, where they have an all-you-can-eat prime rib and crab buffet for $42.99 on Fridays only. Seems like all the YouTubers were here recently since the reopening. I couldn't make it to the Wednesdays only lobster buffet because I work full-time, and my friends were telling me the line was about 200-300 people by 6 p.m. Prime rib and crab buffet coming up.
Hi guys, this is Ken from One Man One Camera, and right now I'm at the Palms. All you can eat on a Friday night. It is prime rib night, and I invite you all to come on down and give it a try.
That was Ken from One Man One Camera. Ken's really cool. There were a lot of YouTubers here because of the reopening and the lobster buffet. I'm sure you've heard about it by now. Everyone has. Wednesday nights, all you can eat lobster. Well, last Wednesday, there were too many people, maybe 200 to 300 by 6 p.m. About a 3-hour wait. And it's $64.99, so a lot cheaper than Bacchanal. But that was a little bit crazy, especially since I get off a little before 6. Coming back to the Palms made me realize that I've missed the Palms. I have a lot of memories here, a lot of things I had forgotten over the years. Now on Fridays they have this prime rib buffet, prime rib night, but they also have crab legs. In addition to the prime rib, they had a porchetta, or porchetta in Italian. It's an Italian version of a fatty roasted pork. The crab legs here come in two versions. They have the chilled one next to the shrimp, and then also a hot version, steamed, and they have lots of drawn butter. They don't have any king crab, it's just snow crab, but it's the meaty kind. They weren't that small, they weren't that big, just medium. They also had salmon and couscous. Let me say a little bit about the salmon. This is a buffet, and I got a buffet version of salmon because the salmon was pretty dried out. And that's the case with most of the fish at buffets that I've had, unless you go to some of the nicer buffets. There are a few places that have really good quality fish that isn't dried out, like the Chilean sea bass at the Bellagio. This one was pretty dry. The couscous and the vegetables were pretty good. It would have been a great pairing with the salmon, but the salmon being so dry, imagine serving this at Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay on your case about how this should never be overcooked or be left to sit and dry out like this. The salmon definitely was not good. But that's what you get in a buffet most of the time because of the mass production, and that's a common theme. Let's get on to some of the other items at the buffet. This is the eggplant parmesan, and they had all kinds of vegetables. I've heard that the pizza here was pretty good, but by the time I got around to looking for pizza, they looked pretty dried out under that heat lamp. Compared to some of the larger hotels, the buffet was not as extensive in the items, but they still had a fair selection, including a pasta bar where everything's freshly made. Those are always going to be pretty good. They had some hot links and tri-tip and some roasted pork as well. All the meats at the buffets usually are not going to be of the best quality, such as a barbecue specialty restaurant or a steakhouse. You kind of get used to expecting that if you go to a lot of Las Vegas buffets. They had some cilantro rice, some frijoles, and even sushi. But usually the sushi at the buffets are not something that I crave. I mean, they had some poke and some decent looking rolls. Looks like a lot of rice, very filling. I think I'll pass on this at this time. There are really good sushi places in Las Vegas, and a buffet is not usually where I eat sushi unless something looks really impressive. And the same goes for Chinese food. It's a buffet Chinese food. And if you've been to some really good Chinese restaurants, you can tell the difference. Usually a little more bland, a little more dried out, mass produced. But the shumai looked really good. I didn't have any because I was too full from eating the other items, but they did have some interesting looking items. There are a lot of average buffets and below average buffets. This one I would say is above average because you can pay $70, $75 up to $80 for a premium buffet and still be disappointed. It's just something about buffets and the mass production that you can't quite achieve the quality that you can from a real specialty restaurant. But there is a large number of items that you can sample. It's all you can eat. And so they do have some pretty interesting looking items, and some of the food does taste really good. I already know what I came for, mainly the prime rib and the crab, some shrimp, and the desserts. On this walkthrough, I did notice some impressive looking items. Unfortunately, that's not what I came for, and you can't taste everything. You can't eat everything. Maybe you can, but I know my limits, and I know I have to save room because I wanted to fill up on the stuff that I really wanted to eat. Another impressive looking dish, the grilled branzino. This item is usually pretty expensive at Italian restaurants. It's all you can eat here. They had some things that look like collard greens, some fried chicken, I think. What's that on the bottom of the pan? Is that grease? But the prime rib here is what I came for. They normally cut you a pretty thin slice, but you know me, and if you see my other videos, I always ask for a thick cut. For some reason, the thicker cut prime rib is better. It's more satisfying. The thin ones, you can just put a whole bunch of them in a sandwich. And if you've been to buffets a lot, you know that you can only eat so much. You have to pace yourself or have a game plan, some kind of a strategy. I got the porchetta because it looked pretty good. I wanted to try it out. It kind of reminds me of the lechon, the Filipino style pork belly, especially the Cebu style where they roll it with the seasoning inside. The crab legs look really good on this video, but they are a little bit small, but not that small, just average sized. For the shrimp was pretty good sized, not the biggest, but pretty plump. A few of those can fill you up. And also, if you get a really thick cut prime rib like I did, it's gonna fill you up, unless you're a really big eater. But how many of these can you eat? 2 or 3? That's pretty good. But then there's so many items that you want to eat. The prime rib here was pretty good. It wasn't exactly the most tender prime rib. It did have a buffet feel to it, like as far as quality goes. Not as tender as it could be, but it was still good enough for me to just scarf down. I finished this in about 10 minutes. It was decently tender. Not as much as it could be, like I said, but it was still tender to let you know it's a prime rib. The porchetta was a little bit more dry. The skin wasn't quite as crispy, but there was still some moist parts of the pork. This is a fatty pork after all. It shouldn't be dry at all. But if you're not overly critical and you have a realistic expectation of a buffet, you might have a good time here. I did. I really enjoyed it. The prime rib and the shrimp delivered. The crab was a little bit disappointing, however. The only thing that saved the crab was the drawn butter. The drawn butter was great. I don't know if I came here for the drawn butter or the crab. And the reason I say this is that the crab, it looked great, but when I started eating it, the crab was a little bit dried out. I had a few of the crab legs here that were so dry that they were splitting when I would poke it with the fork. It was dry. One sign of a crab that's kind of, I don't know, older, not as fresh, or stored and reserved, frozen, thawed, I don't know. However you put it, the crab meat doesn't come out of the shell as easily. The meat sort of sticks to the shell on the inside. But it was still good. I'm not too critical. It was a little bit dry, but it was still crab meat. And some of them were not as dry. And then with the drawn butter, all you can eat crab, I got 2 plates. I got the chilled version and I also got the steamed version. They were all good, but they all had some drier pieces. If you're looking for the highest quality, go to a seafood restaurant or a steakhouse or even a seafood boil. But if you're looking for all you can eat crab and prime rib, I think it's a fair deal. $42, all you can eat prime rib, shrimp, and you have all the other items if you can eat that much. Otherwise, you can still get your fill of crab legs and prime rib for less than you would at a steakhouse or a seafood restaurant. Even if it wasn't the best quality crab, it was still really good, delicious with the drawn butter. You get the hot and the chilled versions. I got my fill of crab. I got my fill of prime rib. I ate my shrimp with the cocktail sauce, but you can even use the drawn butter. It gives you more of a shrimp scampi taste. They had a couple of items that got me curious. Guess what this is? If you can guess what this is, I'd be pretty impressed. It's not any kind of a meat, but it's grilled. So I had to try this. This is grilled watermelon. Came with a little bit of cheese on top. To tell you the truth, it tasted like watermelon that was almost about to be rotten, and the pungent cheese only made it worse. It was kind of watermelon that had a stink to it. So yeah, wasn't really good. They also had grilled pineapples. The pineapple was good. It was sweet. It was juicy. It was pretty good. If you're a pineapple lover, you'd love this dish. Their cilantro rice and frijoles or refried beans was good. The tri-tip and then the pork, they were all good. You can even get tortillas and you can get some pico de gallo and make yourself some tacos or eat it with the tortilla. These were really good. The tri-tip and the pork both were a little bit dry. I would say the piece of tri-tip that I got was more moist than some of the other pieces, but you're gonna find dry parts and you're gonna find some that are not as bad. It's what is expected from a buffet, your typical buffet quality meats. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm really hungry, most everything tastes really good. But when you start getting full, the food is not as good as it was when you were really hungry. Also, another thing that affects the taste of the food is when there's too much to choose from. You can't focus on just one. But there's always room for dessert. At least for me, when I have dessert, I feel a little better. I even feel like that the full feeling starts to disappear a little more as the sugar helps the digestion process. I don't know. I don't know the science behind it. Their desserts here were pretty good. It wasn't as extensive as, say, the Bellagio or the Wicked Spoon or the Wynn Buffet, but they were still pretty good. The desserts come in bite-sized portions, pretty small, so you could sample a variety of them. I am a sucker for jellos. I don't know why. I always have to get jello. My favorite desserts are at the Wynn, the Bellagio, and the Wicked Spoon. But these weren't far behind. Their chocolate mousse was really good. But I usually like any kind of chocolate mousse. They do have gelato ice cream, some cookies. I really also like their raspberry tart. This one was really good, but this is just me. You can get what you like. Also, their creme brulee I thought was better than most I've had recently, but I've had some subpar creme brulees. It was pretty good, but I'm pretty full now, and that's gonna do it for me here at the Palms. I think it was a great buffet and it was worth it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.
Thank you and good night.